Welcome to Leadership and Motherhood, the podcast for ambitious, high-achieving women navigating leadership in the boardroom and at home. I'm your host, Leanna McGrath, business leader, mom, and certified executive coach. I believe that every woman deserves to create a life and career on her own terms, one that she truly loves. This podcast is here to help you do just that. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Today's episode is in honor of World Health Day, which we are celebrating this week. And I really wanted to use this as an opportunity to zoom out a little bit and look at what health actually means. Because I think for so many of us, especially high-achieving women, we know what we're supposed to be doing when it comes to our health, and yet actually doing it consistently and focusing on ourselves and prioritizing our well-being is often a completely different story. And so that's why I'm really excited for this conversation. I am joined by Dr. Meghan Garcia-Webb, who is a triple board certified medical doctor. And she's also a certified life coach, which I think is such a powerful combination because yes, she has the medical expertise and she also understands the mindset piece, the behavior change piece, the part that doesn't get addressed in a typical doctor's visit, but is often the reason that we feel stuck. In this conversation, we talk a lot about that gap between knowing and doing and what actually gets in the way, and also what it can look like to approach your health in a way that's more realistic, more sustainable, and honestly, a lot more compassionate. If you have ever felt frustrated with yourself when it comes to your health, or like you just can't seem to follow through the way that you want to, this is a great episode for you to listen to, and please share with anyone you know who could benefit from it as well. I'm so glad you're here. I am very excited to introduce today's guest, Dr. Meghan Garcia-Webb. And let me tell you a little bit about her. So Meghan Garcia-Webb, MD, is triple board certified in internal medicine, lifestyle medicine, and obesity medicine. She produces a weekly YouTube series, Weight Medicine with Dr. Meghan, MD, and provides life coaching to help people fix the one big thing blocking their weight loss. Her innovative private practice combines concierge weight medicine with life coaching, and she is also an internist at an academic medical center in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome, Dr. Meghan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Maybe could you start off by telling us a little bit more about you and your background and kind of how you came to where you are, because I think it's such an interesting combination of medicine and life coaching. So tell us all about you.
Yes, absolutely. So I went into primary care after my residency, which I love. I love the variety of primary care. I think it's so important. And I just noticed that I was having the same conversations with people over and over and over about their weight. And so that really led me to, I felt like we were giving people a lot of information and it just wasn't landing. And also obesity and overweight and weight issues are such a huge root cause of so many medical issues that I realized if I could treat this better, if I could really fix what was going on for people, a lot of things would get so much better for them. But it wasn't really an information problem. It was an action problem for people. And so I did my lifestyle medicine certification. I did my obesity medicine boards, and I did my obesity boards and my life coaching training at the same time. And the life coaching training was so helpful because I feel like coaching really helps you get from where you want to be to actually doing what you want to do. And how do you remove those mental blocks that are getting in the way? And I really felt like that was the missing piece for me in terms of helping people to actually make those changes. And so not something that we learn in medical school, unfortunately, and maybe that will change in the future. And then I work in an academic medical center now, but I also have my private practice on the side. And I see people in Massachusetts and then all around the world for the coaching aspect.
Oh, wonderful. And you're also a mom, right?
Yes, absolutely. I have a daughter who's 13 and a 9-year-old son.
Awesome. So you know what we're all doing here.
Oh, I had my daughter 6 months before I started residency. So
Mm.
100% know what that is like.
How was that?
It was a hard time of life. Yeah. I think it was good that I didn't know about what residency was going to be like. And I didn't, you think you have an idea, but you don't really know until you get there. And I was a first time mom. So I really had no other experience of motherhood in any other way. I think you just like that was the time in my life when everything came together to happen. So it was just like, wasn't really a question. It was just like, well, this is what my life looks like. And so how am I going to navigate that? And I'm very lucky. I have a very supportive partner, and my mom is incredibly supportive as well. And my sister lives nearby. So I did have a village, and that was, I mean, I could not have done it without them.
Yeah. Wow. I can't imagine. I can't imagine. It's a lot to juggle as a parent in residency.
Yes. Memorable time.
I feel like I kind of don't remember that time, but I mean, I wasn't doing residency, but I was an executive with a baby. And
Right.
I look at pictures and I'm like, oh, yeah, I did that.
I did that. Don't know quite how I did it, but it happened.
Yeah. So tell me more about there's a lot of information out there on wellness and health, and there's no shortage of it. We can get all the information on Google if we really, really wanted to. But it sounds like for you, that's not the issue, right? What you've seen in your patients and in your clients is not an issue of information. It's actually implementing it. So what do you think it is that people need more of that isn't currently being offered?
Yeah, I think we don't think enough about identity and autonomy when we're wanting to make these changes. I'll give you a great example. I mean, I get this at least once a week. I'll be talking to somebody and they'll say, I really wanted to exercise, but it was so cold. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that has to do with you exercising. Like to them, it sounds like makes perfect sense, right? We're in Boston, it's winter, it's freezing, but also like there's no rule that you have to work out outside. I mean, you can if you want to, but like you can work out in your bedroom if you want to. Like there's so many different options for people. And so part of it is just number one, realizing that our body kind of naturally is going to resist these changes. Like we weren't really built to exercise, right? Like 5,000 years ago, everybody was trying to avoid famine. So exercise is a completely artificial concept that we've created to adapt to our like land of plenty. So I think it's never a surprise if somebody doesn't feel motivated. And I mean, I'm still waiting to feel motivated, and I know it's never going to happen. So then what, right? Like I still want to exercise. So there's naturally going to be some resistance. You have so much more control than you think you do. I do think that when we start to build this identity of who we want to be, like, oh, you know what? I really do want to be somebody who is a runner, or I really do want to be somebody who eats lots of fruits and vegetables, or goes for a walk every day, or like that's the kind of person that I want to be. I think that's such a more fruitful and helpful way to approach things, because our culture right now, in terms of getting healthy, it just seems like such a grind. It's like, well, you got to track everything and you've got to like grind it out. And I know that doesn't have to be the case. Like, great if that works for somebody, but it doesn't have to. There's no one size fits all model. And I do really think that it can be overwhelming for people if they think, oh, well, if I'm going to get healthy, it's going to be a lot of extra work and it's not going to be fun. And I think that getting healthier can be more enjoyable and you can like your life more.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love so many things about what you just said. The first thing I noted is that you're still waiting to feel motivated. I'm a huge Peloton fan, and Jess Sims is one of my favorite instructors. She always says, being motivated isn't a feeling, it is a decision, right? Like we have to decide.
Right.
We can't just wait around for that feeling, because you're right, it may never come. Or we feel it and it's fleeting. And that's probably how most of us feel about starting something new or doing something that we're telling ourselves we don't want to do is that, well, I felt motivated last night at 10 o'clock, but I didn't want to go to the gym, or the gym was closed or whatever, right?
Right.
But now that motivation's gone. And I think that anytime, of course, and I talk a lot on this podcast about our resistance to change, how anytime we try to make a change, our primitive brain is very much like, no, 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 like, let me just stay cozy and comfy
Right.
and try to seek more pleasure, avoid all that pain, and conserve all the energy that it would take to make that change. So I think the idea of, if we position anything in our minds as like a lot of work and no fun, then like, why would we do it? That sounds terrible.
Like we're just setting ourselves up to fail.
Right, absolutely. And then finally, I think this idea of like identifying who we want to be. And if we tell ourselves that I'm a person who works out, or I'm a person who chooses healthy foods to eat, or whatever, then like that's our identity. But I think what happens a lot, and maybe you see this, do you hear a lot of people coming and telling you like, I'm just not an athlete, or I'm not the kind of person who likes vegetables, or I don't know. Do you see that kind of thing a lot?
I do. Yeah. Oh, I don't like salads.
Mm.
Somebody told me the other day, they're like, well, I don't like cutting vegetables. And I was like, okay, like, fine. Like, there's no law that you have to cut vegetables. And actually, there's a whole entire aisle in the grocery store of like pre-cut vegetables for you. So I feel like it's just, to me, it's really funny and amusing how our brain just finds all these little tiny ways to like these little excuses, and they sound so true and they make so much sense to our brain. And that's why I think coaching is so beautiful, is you can say this to somebody and believe it so much. And then when it gets reflected back to you, you're like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me more about like what you're doing. You're combining medicine with lifestyle and mindset. It's so interesting to me. So tell me more about that.
Yes, it is a little hard to describe because I kind of made it up because there was nothing like that available for people. And I really felt like, gosh, if I could do anything, if I could really help people, if I could give them everything I have, this is what I would do. And so for people in Massachusetts, I see them and I can be their weight medicine doctor, meaning if we need to start medications, or if they're already on medications, or if they just want to talk about their labs, or they're worried that they have weight promoting medical issues or medications that they're on, we can go through all that and I can do the physician part of it. But we can also spend a large amount of time talking about the non-medical aspects of what's going on with their weight. And that could be somebody who has any type of BMI. I like the term weight medicine because there are people who can have an issue with their weight and have a, normal BMI, or a BMI that's higher than they feel like it's healthy for them. But people can really have an issue with their weight at any size, at any shape. And so we can talk about, not only those medical issues, but we can talk about the mindset obstacles that are getting in their way. A lot of it is about their schedule. Why are they having a hard time prioritizing themselves? Why are they eating so fast? Why are they having like half an energy bar at their desk while they're working and calling it lunch? So we can do a really deep dive into all these other things that over the years I've found are really so much more important to being healthy and changing not only somebody's weight, but just their relationship with food and themselves. That is a lot more in depth than, traditional insurance will provide. So I really wanted to make this something that I knew that's what people needed. So I had to create it outside a traditional system.
So interesting. And I remember when we initially talked, you talked about the idea of sitting down and actually like eating a meal without distractions. Can you help us understand why that's important?
Sometimes I think that there are like maybe 5 people in America that have a proper meal. It's so important for so many reasons. Number one, nobody knows when they're hungry and when they're full.
Mm.
That I think is 90% of the problem that people have with their eating, is they just don't know when they're actually full. And they're not sure what the difference is between true hunger and mind hunger. And that's something that I go over with people all the time. And a lot of times it's different for every person because the bodily cues that one patient has, to tell them that they're full might be very different than the bodily cues that somebody else has. So it's really about what does that actually feel like? And it sounds so basic when you talk about it, but it's really important and nobody does it. So nobody knows when they're hungry and when they're full. We have a culture that really doesn't prioritize meals, like especially lunch. I think there's this idea of like, well, lunch is just something that you get through and that you like kind of power your way through so you can do other things and like get on with your day.
Mhm.
And I just feel like that's not a pleasant way to live. Like I don't want to live that way. I think you're missing out like on your quality of life. But also when you rush through your meals, you're probably going to be eating more than you need. And so not only are people not aware that they're full, but they're not even giving themselves a chance to discover what it is because they're so distracted while they're eating. Everybody's doing 5 different things, and then they're giving themselves 5 minutes, or they're eating in their car, or we just really don't give ourselves a chance to literally digest our food. It's not a personal thing, it's just the way that we've been taught. Also, there's all these fast casual places. It's like you can get this meal to go and eat it really quickly and just go on with your day.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not saying that everybody has to have like a 3-course meal and take 2 hours for lunch. I mean, that would be great. But I think there's definitely a middle ground. We don't acknowledge that it's good for our brains to be a little bored. It's
Mm.
good to actually just sit and do nothing and just like be with your food and your meal and let your mind wander and actually taste your food and see if you're actually hungry, see if you even like the food that you're eating. I think we're just so used to like moving on to the next thing that we're just totally not aware that, these are some very simple things to fix, but they really involve like really stepping back and looking at how like such basic things that we do in our everyday life.
Yeah, I think I'm guilty of all the things you've said. Like the question that comes to my mind, thinking about what my listeners would ask or respond with, and that would be something like, well, I don't have time for that. That sounds lovely, but like, I have so much work to do throughout the day. And during lunch, I probably have to like call the doctors and make my kids appointments or whatever, right? Like it doesn't feel like there's time to do that. And I'm sure you've heard that before. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about that? Or what do you usually say to that?
When you think about having a meal, it can just be 15 minutes. And I tell people, like, if you're at work and you have to be at your desk and you can't like leave, it could be as simple as like, okay, your computer's here and you just turn to the side and have like 15 minutes of just not facing your computer. Like, it doesn't have to be tricky. So you just have to like disconnect. It really takes about 15 minutes for the signal from your stomach to reach your brain. So our bodies don't run on our work clocks. So we have to give ourselves at least 15 minutes. I also like to challenge people because whatever they're doing while they're eating, by definition, cannot be the most important thing. Because if it was the most important thing, they wouldn't be eating. So, like, if you are giving a presentation, if you are, making a really big phone call, if you are performing surgery, like, you're not eating while you're doing it. You're going to find another time. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a helpful reminder of like, I just always think if there's no blood on the floor and the authorities are not involved, whatever is going on can wait, really can wait 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I also think this is a great opportunity for people to look at because the I have no time argument comes up so much for everything. It's like, well, I have no time to exercise. I have no time to. And I really love to just take that as an opportunity to think about like really your autonomy as a person, somebody who's in charge of your schedule, and realize like you really do have full control over everything. And I think whenever we start to tell ourselves, and I'm sure you hear this with your clients all the time, like, I should do this, I have to do this, like, to me, those are always red flag words of like, I'm not taking full responsibility for my schedule, my actions. Like, I don't have to do anything, right? Like, I choose to do things. Like, I don't have to take my kids to school. Like, I do it because I want them to go to school, but I never have to, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's always a great jumping off point to, okay, well, where else is this showing up in your life? Because I feel like that's one of the bigger issues for people is really feeling pulled in a lot of different directions and not really seizing their own autonomy
Yeah.
and being the kind of the captain of their own ship of like, this is my schedule, this is my life. I get to do whatever I want. And you know what? I don't want to have like lunch in my car anymore. And that's a choice you can definitely make, right?
Yeah.
But I think it also leads into other things of like that is a completely countercultural approach, especially for women. Like
Yes.
when you start to do that, there's internal resistance and there's also external resistance. So it's not that it's necessarily easy, but I think you can address a lot of that resistance within the world of coaching because it's going to prompt a lot of things to come up for people.
For sure. Yes. I talk a lot about that I have to versus versus I want to, right? Or I choose to, because I do think that that puts us in such a disempowered victim kind of state where we feel like my calendar owns me or oh, these things are outside my control. I want to go back to something you said that I just love to hear more about. You talked about two kinds of hunger, true hunger and mind hunger. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So your true appetite only comes from one chemical in your body from your stomach, and it's called ghrelin. And there's only one signal that goes to your brain. And you have about 1 billion different signals for fullness. So lots of different places that your stomach, your intestines, signal to your brain that you're full. But there's really only one true cue for hunger, which I think is so interesting. And so we have this physiological hunger, but then we also have this mind hunger. When that is, I'm sure everybody can identify with that. Like you've just had a meal, but then you see some dessert and you're like, "Ooh, that looks good. Like I'm sure I could make room for that." Or you are, doing something else and you're like, "I just want something to." So it's hunger that really doesn't come from a physical need. It's hunger that comes from boredom or stress, or there's so many people who eat when they're sad or eat when they're happy. And so when you learn what your true hunger feels like, it's so much easier to recognize, okay, like I know that this is just mind hunger. This is just my brain saying, I want food because of this. And it's not because I really need something to eat.
Yeah. The question that's coming up for me, and it's probably like a whole master class, is just like, how do we figure out when we're hungry and full? Because, like you said before, that's something that a lot of people don't actually know how to detect within our bodies. So, is there anything you could tell us about kind of how we would start that process?
Yes. So I love using what's called the hunger scale for people. It's a tool that came out of the work by the dietitians who created intuitive eating, which is a great book if anybody's looking for it's not a quick read, it's a very good read.
Mm,
But they really go into, how do you map that out for yourself? What does it feel like?
hmm.
And that's a great place for anybody who is just kind of like, I have no idea where to start with this.
Yeah.
And then after people are more comfortable knowing, and I work with people on this all the time, like what is their hunger? Then we work a lot on, okay, well, what do you do when you have these urges, right? Desires for food when you're not actually hungry. So the first step is like, okay, is this actual hunger? Or is it just my brain wanting something else to do for whatever reason?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if it is mind hunger and it's still a problem, because I think sometimes when people recognize it's mind hunger, it's like, oh, okay, I don't really have to respond to that. Like some people, it's just very clear for them. And then for other people, they're like, well, I know I'm not hungry, but it's still kind of haunting me.
Interesting. So then what do we do?
so, so I think it really depends on what a lot of people call this food noise. It really depends on what the food noise is coming from.
Yeah.
Some people have food noise because they're eating a lot of processed foods, and those are foods that, really are engineered to be, addictive. There are scientists who design the food to like hit these, maximum points of sweetness, saltiness, texture. So they're really designed to get you to eat more. So there's, sometimes the food noise is coming from that. Sometimes the food noise is coming from wanting to distract ourselves. So not wanting to feel an uncomfortable emotion. I also find that for a lot of people, for a lot of women, the food noise is coming from like diet culture and deprivation. So if we've always told ourselves that, we can't have this because that's a bad food, or like, oh, I can't have chocolate, I shouldn't have chocolate, or I shouldn't eat this, and I shouldn't, that type of restriction can create food noise as well because we've just put these foods on a pedestal, right? And I always like to tell people, I always like to bring up the example. Like most people know if they haven't worked in an ice cream shop as like a teenager, they know somebody who has. By the end of the summer, the person who's working in the ice cream shop, they do not want ice cream. In no way do they want ice cream because it's around them all the time and it's not special, right?
Yeah.
But when we tell ourselves we can't have these foods and we make them so special and forbidden, right? Paradoxically, they just take up more space in our brain. So the first step is really figuring out like what the driver is for somebody.
Yeah. My biggest driver is that I don't want to do something else. I'm about to organize the pantry or clean something. And then I'm like, ooh, I'm hungry because that sounds way more appealing than
Right.
doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to the ice cream shop example. My first job was at Boston Market and they had the little cornbreads and I don't think I ate cornbread for like 10 or 15 years after I worked
No,
there.
you were done with the cornbread. You were all set.
Absolutely. So I know that you work with a lot of high achievers who are in survival mode. And so I guess I'm curious, we've talked about a lot of different things, but like what specifically do you see in that population? Because I think that's often, people who are listening to this show and, what are you noticing and or what advice do you have for those folks?
Yeah. One thing that I notice for high achieving moms is that they're really in this food chaos environment. They're just in survival mode. They are never sitting down to eat. They're always standing up and doing five different things while they're eating. They are, maybe eating the scraps that their child left and like or they're like eating in front of the fridge, or they're not treating themselves the way they would treat their kids, right? Anytime that a meal has to be made, it's always like confusion or chaos or like takeout and just an environment that really doesn't meet their health needs. Like they don't want to live that way, but they don't really see any other way. And I think it taps into, we were talking about this earlier, this idea that this narrative that I think our society has of like, well, if you're a working mother and you're successful, like you're just a hot mess, right?
Like in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Like your life must be like frazzled and chaotic and you're just like running on empty.
Hmm.
And I think that really is not true, but is like a very kind of sneaky cultural narrative of like, well, this is just the way it is. If you're like a working mom, like you're just running on empty all the time. And I really think it's possible that you can have a full life. I like the word full as opposed to busy. You can have a full life, like lots of things going on. Your food does not have to be chaotic or dramatic, or like it could even be like pleasant and enjoyable. You don't have to accept that narrative of, well, this is just how it's going to be.
I agree. And I think that it is definitely the culture where it's almost like an expectation that we deprioritize anything that's not work or kids.
Hmm.
And it's very common because it's like, well, I've got these two huge things in my life. And like, when do I have time to meal prep or cook a decent meal or sit down and eat a decent meal? I've got to make sure that like those things are taken care of.
Yeah. And I really think it is about seeing, I think for a lot of women, it's hard to like really center yourself in your needs, right? I think it's hard just for women to be like, oh, I am also a living, breathing human, right? Like,
Yes.
I also want to exist and I want all these things, right? So I think if that isn't accessible for people yet, if they're not to that place where they can be like, yeah, I just want to have a nice lunch just because, right? They're
Hmm.
not at that place. I think that the step to get to that is really seeing yourself as the resource. Like, I am the resource. I have to protect myself as a resource. I
Yes.
have to protect myself so that I can do these other things, so that I can be the mom I want to be for my kids, so that I can be, the CEO that I want to be for my company, so that I can be all these things. And I think that's a step up to get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that bridge thought is really important and necessary sometimes when we aren't at the place yet where we're like, I can take care of me just because I want to.
Right. Like, so controversial, right? Like, I
Right.
also get to exist as a human. But I think it brings up this other point is that when you do like prioritize yourself and what you need and what you want, sometimes it can feel really bad. Like, I was just thinking about this the other day. It was like years ago, I had to make this really big decision, and it was very clear what the right decision was. And there were other people in my life that did not want me to make this decision in that way. But it was obvious what it was. And then when I made the decision, like, it felt terrible. And I knew, like, objectively, I knew it was the right decision. I think the litmus test is if you're telling, your best friend or your sister or your mom or somebody who really cares about you, if you're saying it out loud
Hmm.
and it sounds like, well, yeah, this is clearly the right thing to do. Sometimes you just have to hold on to that objective reality while, like, the emotional side of you that's not used to prioritizing yourself catches up. And when I think about, like, okay, what were the thoughts and the feelings that were creating that awful feeling afterwards after I made this decision,
Hmm.
like, there was really nothing to them. There was, like, so vague, there was no good reason. It was just, there was no substance to it. But I think that's something that probably we're not kind of sneaks up on you, right? Like, when you do prioritize yourself, just be ready because it might not feel the way you think it's going to feel, at least at first.
Yeah, well, I think that you've talked about this now and you talked about it earlier just about like the feeling of motivation for working out. And I think it is true that sometimes the thing that doesn't feel the best in the moment
Mm,
is the thing that will feel the best later
right.
if we are relying only on how it feels in the moment, then
Hmm.
like that's just like not a good compass.
Right, exactly.
Return that GPS.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like, that is, and it feels like that, and it feels so important, right, to listen to those signals. But depending on the circumstance, it is not the map you want to be using, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, certainly not to get to where you want to actually be beyond that moment. Yeah. So, what else haven't I asked you? Because I feel like I want to hear about this all day long.
Oh.
But what haven't I asked you that you would love to share or dig more into?
I just love to think about with clients, I love to really dig into, like, well, how do you actually want to live? Like, we know how you're living now. We know that you're having your cereal for dinner while your toddler is taking a bath, right? That's your reality right now. But, like, do you want to have dinner like that? And if so, great. Like, not a problem. We'll move on. But I think we don't even ask ourselves that. We just accept, like, this is my chaotic mom life. And we don't even think that I know this. Like, I know this because I have kids, I have a busy schedule, and food is just like pleasant and relaxing. And I think I just really want to crack the door open for people, like, that could be another possibility for them. But it is completely countercultural. And it is something that most people, like, they don't even, it's not even on their radar of something that they would consider, you know?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of times we don't ask ourselves that question because we tell ourselves it's not possible
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be painful to think about the ideal,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just like too painful to know that we're not living the way that we want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just accept whatever it is right now
Right.
and say like, well, this is how it's going to be.
Right.
That's the whole point of coaching is, right? Like we're fighting for the life that someone wants to create for themselves.
Absolutely.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I think that this gives people some things to think about for sure. Maybe if we're not thinking about how we're eating, because probably just not at the top of what's in their mind, right? All the time.
Yeah. And I also I never want people to feel like, I never want them to use that against themselves or feel shame, like because they are doing these things. It's like, well, of course, that's what most people are doing, right?
Yeah.
Or like internalize it. I just want to move more for people to that place of it could be different, right?
Yeah.
And what would that look like? And life could be healthier and better, but you don't have to beat yourself up for what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that is coming up for me that might be a thought that is offered to a lot of people is like, man, this is like one more thing I have to think about, right? Like
Mm.
I've got so many things that I have to think about or that I'm thinking about all day long at work and, the kids coordination and all the other things I'm doing. So it's like this is just not even on my radar. And so then I hear this and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this too. I had to think about this too. What do you think about that?
The idea of getting more sleep comes up. It's like we all know we want to get more sleep, right?
Yeah.
Or some people, a lot of people do. And it's like, but it makes such a huge difference. Like it's like these things that we hear over and over and over, but
Hmm.
they don't really sink in or maybe they don't land. And it's like, but also if we want to evolve into that next version of ourselves, it's going to involve some change, right? And so I think what's important to keep in mind is that, yeah, we're always going to be changing and evolving, but it's going to be better. So we're not trying to grind or hustle or berate ourselves into a new eating pattern. Like it could actually be energizing and fun and something that brings some joy to our day and over time just gets better and better and is really like an investment in ourselves. I really think for women, we need to be so aggressively positive with ourselves and not from a toxic positivity way, but how can I make this so easy for myself? How can I make this better for myself, right? I don't think these are questions that we're taught to ask, but how can this be easier for me, right?
Yeah. Well, where can people find you if they are looking for help with this, if they want to work with you?
Yes, absolutely. So they can go to my website, which is www.weightmediциnemd.com, and they can book a discovery call with me, and I will tell them all about how I help people. And they can also check out my YouTube channel. I talk about lifestyle changes. I talk a lot about medications for weight, and that's Weight Medicine with Dr. Meghan, MD.
Wonderful. And we'll link everything in the show notes so that people can easily find you. And is there anything else that you feel like you want to leave people with to think about?
I just think that coaching is the best thing ever for people. So I just really appreciate all the work that you're doing and the messages that you're getting out there because it really is, I really feel like it's the secret sauce to getting the life you want. So thank you so much for all your work.
Well, thank you. And thank you for coming on the show. And I am a big fan of your work as well, because I think it's so cool whenever people take non-traditional paths. And this is like a fusion, like cuisine, right? It's like a fusion profession where you're like, I'm going to take medicine and life coaching and
Yes.
combine them. And I think that's amazing because I know there are so many people who need that. So thank you, Dr. Meghan. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in today. And we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening to Leadership and Motherhood. I genuinely hope you're walking away with something helpful that will positively impact your life. If this podcast resonates with you, it would mean the world to me if you'd support the show by leaving a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, sharing an episode you loved with someone you care about, and/or by following the show. I hope you'll join me again next week. And until then, I'm wishing you all the best in this season of your one and only precious life.